welcome here for another one of our weekly webinars. If you've never been here before, if you've never met me, my name is Josh Gregory. I am the director of our consulting and training teams here. Work across a whole different variety of functions here that work with buyers and with contractors. So this hopefully will not be the last time we work together. For all of our regular attendees, welcome back. So whether you are brand new here to the industry or you have been a contractor for 20 years, we still want this to be a place where we can all come together, learn, ask questions, and kind of bring each other up and have a little bit of fun too. But before that, we do have this quick topic or a quick disclaimer that I have to read every week. Route Consultant is not endorsed by and is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. So all that means is, we're not going to be sharing any materially non-public information, but this is something where we want to bring you some info today to help you make the right decisions in the future, hopefully answer some of your questions, and help us all kind of chart a path forward. So just a general overview for how these webinars work. There's a couple of updates I go through at the beginning. We'll get into some content, and then at the end, we will open it up for pure Q&A, any questions you have. Importantly, on the Q&A, first, if you are typing in your question, make sure you press the Q&A button at the bottom of the window and type it in. If you put it in the chat, I'm going to miss it. So go ahead, and as I'm talking, you can load your questions in, or you can wait until I open it up for Q&A. Anytime works. The other thing when it comes to the Q&A is our weekly tradition here is we have a question of the week that we need you to answer before we will answer your question. So our question of the week this week is, what do you consider to be the greatest TV show of all time? So answer that question and then type in your question, and then we'll answer your question. Myself and my co-host will also answer the question of the week later. So a couple of quick updates on upcoming events. The big one that's coming, as shocking as it is, we are already approaching July. So we have our big Contractor Expo, July 28th through 30th in Vegas. Anybody can come to that. It is something that is completely free to register. We will pay for all the food and drinks, and you'll have plenty of both. But in addition to that, it's a time where you get to meet contractors from across the country, come together, make sure we're sharing best practices, learning from others in the space, and continuing to grow. So hopefully we will see all of you there. It's kind of the can't miss event of the year when it comes to the contractor space. So it is at the Paris Hotel. And the big thing I would tell you is, when it comes to registering, we aren't going to run out of registrations. Anybody can register for it. What we will run out of is hotel space. So if you are trying to make sure that you're coming to the event and that you can stay close to the event, we have a hotel block at the Paris, but it will run out. And I can tell you, July in Vegas is not fun to be out walking in that Vegas heat. So the closer you can stay to that hotel, the better. So hopefully you can make it into that hotel block. And I would encourage you to go ahead and register and sign up for that hotel block if you do plan on coming. Now, there's also 2 upcoming happy hours that we do just to meet others in the area. So we have one May 11th in Seattle, and then one May 18th in Chicago. So if you're in the area as a contractor, reach out. We've got all the details that'll be in the chat here. Again, completely free. We'll provide the food and drinks. It's just a chance for you to meet others in your area, and we'll be there as well. So hopefully we'll get to see you there. Last quick update, just going to go over the new listings we have for today, and then we will jump into the content. So first new listing is out of North Carolina. It is 13 P&D routes at 1.8 million. There are 9 spare trucks, full-time manager, and it is a 6-day work week, so there's no Sunday as a part of this. And there's some assumable truck debt and seller financing there as well. Next one we have is out of Wisconsin, 12 P&D routes at $1 million. It has 10 spare trucks, 2 full-time managers, waterfront location, and it's mainly new trucks. So if that's something you're looking for out in Wisconsin, we've actually got another one in Wisconsin too, 20 P&D routes at 1.15 million. This one also has 5 spare trucks and 2 full-time managers. And this is a larger business at 20 routes. And this one, again, also is 6 days a week. Starting to see more and more of that. It's great to see. Ohio, we've got one that is 12 P&D routes at 325,000. That one has 4 spare trucks and a full-time manager. This one's a pretty low entry price. So if that's the type of thing you're looking for, where there might be some improvements you can make to that bottom line once you take over, $325,000 is that entry point. Wisconsin, we have another one that is 8 P&D routes with 1 spare truck and a full-time manager. And it's a dense territory with 5 spare drivers as well for contingency. So that is all the new listings for this week. So if you have questions about any of those, reach out to the team. We can share any details that you're looking for there. Now, so when it comes to the content for today, so what we're going to be talking about, many of you have probably heard about or seen articles about FedEx's announcement of Network 2.0 and the Drive program, where their goal is to save billions of dollars over the next few years. If you haven't heard about it, we're going to talk through it a little bit today and what that means for us as contractors and those who are looking to get into the space. Now, some of those cost savings that FedEx is focusing on is on the air and international side of the business. Some of it is on internal cost savings, on procurement and IT spend. But the big one for us as contractors is the integration of FedEx Express into the FedEx Ground Network. So if you've never heard of that before, never heard that there's a difference, currently all of the FedEx Express deliveries are done by FedEx employees, not by contractors. But now some of what FedEx is doing is shifting that volume into the contractor network. Now, it's something that FedEx has talked about for a long time, but now they have set a formal goal of fully integrating that network by next June. So, right now, when you see an express truck that is delivering a package at the same stop where you see a ground truck deliver a package an hour later, it's very obvious why there are some savings and some efficiencies that will come from combining the networks. But FedEx has actually started to pilot some of that overlap. So at the end of last year, they began to pilot it, and now there are actually a few terminals that are fully integrated into Express. So we have some more data and information now on what that's going to look like. So I have brought Jesse Smith on with me today, who is the director of our, he's been a director of our operations, the director on a few different things. He's been a driver, led DRO, all kinds of things across the different roles you can have in the FedEx space. And so I brought him on today to talk a little bit about what we're seeing on the Express side so that we can help everybody start to understand and plan for that volume as it begins to hit the ground network over the next year. So Jesse, I will kick it over to you.
Hey, Josh, thanks for having me. I love being here. Excited to be here today to talk about this exciting new change, right? It's kind of scary because we're not really sure what those other guys and those other FedEx trucks are doing, right? And so we see them out there on our routes with us, but now getting their volume integrated into our network is going to mean some pretty big changes. And I think, Josh, as we kind of started digging in, looking at this, we started seeing a whole new list of acronyms that we're going to have to learn on top of the 200 and however many we have to know right now, right? So that's kind of where I want to start. It's just the real basic boots on the ground level of some new terminology that we're going to see. And then kind of what it means in terms of dispatches, revenue, DRO, things like that. So we'll kind of just build up as we go through this. So let me start with some of these acronyms. So the first one is going to be your FO. That's going to be first overnight. Okay, so that means that when someone orders a package and it's a first overnight, then you'll get it the next business day by 8 or 8:30 or maybe 9:30, depending on if you're in a more rural market or something like that. But your FOs are going to be your first overnights. Those are going to be your highest priority or P1 type packages that you're going to get as new kinds of stops. Your second one's going to be your POs, your priority overnights. Okay, these are going to be due by 10:30 a.m. as deliveries to businesses, and then up to 12 p.m. noon to residences, or sometimes up to 4:30, just depending on if you're in a super rural area. They kind of extend the windows based on the zip code that you're delivering to. And so just kind of be ready for that. So you got your first overnight, your priority overnight, and then you've got what's called your E2AMs. And there's some other ones we could talk about, but those are the three big ones that you're going to see. So your E2AMs, that means your express 2-day morning deliveries, your AM deliveries. And so that means by 2 business days after you ship, you're guaranteed to get your box. And so these will be entering the ground network. And by 10:30 on the second business day, or up to noon, depending on the zip code, you will have a box that you've got to deliver to a business. And then if it's for residents, it may be a little bit after that. They're a little bit less of a priority, obviously. And so those are some of the new terms you're going to see. You might see variations of those, like standard overnight, like SO or E2, which is just basically 2-day service, which we're already seeing quite a few of those. If you guys have noticed the boxes and the little packages you get, a lot of them already say 2-day express saver or whatever. So that's not going to be a huge change. But the ones you're going to really pay attention to is going to be your first overnights, your E2 AMs, and your priority overnights. So those will have very strict delivery windows that you will have to abide by. Now, along with that, obviously FedEx is very interested in protecting what brought them into the business in the first place, which is these priority overnight deliveries. That's really what put Fred Smith's name on the map, was we can get a box from, across the country overnight, which was just unheard of. So needless to say, this is a pretty high profile, high importance type of service we're going to be providing now. And not that the ground service wasn't, obviously, right? I mean, we were the majority of the business. The majority of the volume was coming through the ground business, but these are more of high profile type deliveries. And so what I'd expect to see, Josh, is that as we get more of these into the network, I think the terminal managers are really going to push for more service requirements. And if service is not already being pushed hard, it really will start to be pushed even harder. And something to be aware of, you guys, if you're you may kind of know this intuitively, but the boxes that you pick up, you will get express pickups as well. Now we're kind of waiting to see what the actual ISPA language is that will reflect this, but early reports that we're hearing is that some of these boxes are going to have to be, number one, segregated on the truck by delivery or by location. I'm sorry. So if you pick up a couple boxes from a business that's an express pickup, you need to keep those in a section of your truck that can be easily offloaded when you get them back to the terminal, because those are going to be the priorities that have got to get out on a truck to get to the airport to get to their next overnight service. So make sure you segregate the pickup volume on your truck. The other thing is they have discussed moving the total cutoff time, whatever that is for your station. They're saying that you can expect up to an hour after that to be your final cutoff time. Now, a lot of people hear that, oh my gosh, it's already so late at my building, right? Or whatever it is. They might come off as a negative, but one thing that I've heard, and one thing we've actually tried in some of our operations that may or may not work depending on your territory, but some operators, they employ a pickup only route where someone comes in and just does later pickups because maybe they have a lot of stops that they have to do after 4, 5, 6 p.m., right? So they want someone working that later shift. So if you put some express stops, which are high priority, and then you have that driver stay out a little bit later, this could potentially give you some economies of scale that you could work some positive things into. I'm not going to say it's all positive because it's going to be challenging, right? If they push that dispatch time. But that's something you could potentially integrate into your current efficiencies, is getting maybe a later route out to do pickups and deliveries both, with some of that express volume and some of those express pickups. And then the next thing is going to be the DRO piece. And this is something that we've seen that a lot of, I think what we're going to start experiencing, if your terminal is not already running a wave dispatch, in other words, sort number 1 and sort number 2 in the mornings, I think this is something you're going to need to expect to see. I don't know, again, it's just too early to tell if this is going to be how they do it across the country, but I would expect to start seeing wave dispatches, and your DRO will already accommodate that. If you want to run wave 1 and wave 2, you can set up certain trucks to be on wave 1. And then when those trucks pull out, the rest of the boxes that come in are loaded on different trucks, and then those go out later. That's what we mean by a wave dispatch. That's something that we've seen. And early reports, again, from the DRO is that your express volume, your delivery volume, shows up on a wave 2 in your DRO. So again, if you're not familiar with DRO and how the waves work and how you can see the different visibility on wave 1 and wave 2, reach out to us. I'd be glad to walk you through that. It's not difficult. It's just it's going to be something new to learn, right? And so get ready for potential wave dispatches. Another thing we've seen some success in is some contractors are using AVP options, alternative vehicle program options. As we know, a lot of these express boxes are typically not large. And that's the good thing about this, right? We're not talking a bunch of gigantic bulk stops that, just can get to the business. We're talking typically about, super important overnighted checks, things like that, doctor ordered medication, things like that. Very time sensitive things that have got to get out very quickly. And so a lot of times those are small, not always, but most of the time they're pretty small. So they're ideal for an AVP if that's the kind of route that you can afford to run or want to run. This would be a good option for that, especially if you do a wave dispatch. Pulling in like a minivan or a smaller SUV after all your big trucks have pulled out, that's a pretty ideal setup if you want to run an AVP option for one of your dispatches. And then another thing is, I know people are really wondering about is the revenue and what are we going to expect in the revenue. And Josh, you and I have looked at this. We've tried to run the numbers a million ways from Sunday. And to be honest with y'all, we don't have a whole lot to report here, except that we do expect to see increases over and above your Schedule C1 charges. That is what we're pretty sure of. We've seen early evidence of that. We just don't have an exact charge structure to roll out just yet. And I promise the second we do, we will make you guys aware of that. But just as of right now, we've not noticed any consistent patterns on how that is paid out. We're still trying to kind of parse all that out. That's what we're just working furiously here to digest and get the data out to you guys. So as soon as we have firm answers on what that revenue picture is going to look like, we will get that out. I think I saw this in one of the questions, which we'll get to later, Josh, but I was going to hit this as well. The total volume that you can potentially expect, it's going to be very market dependent, but early indications from the 3 terminals that we've seen is roughly a 1/7 to 1/6 of total volume for some of these contractors of the total weekly volume. 1/7 to 1/6 of the total volume is going to be express volume. Now, one important thing to remember when we say total express volume, we're not just talking about the first overnights and the priority overnights and the E2 AMs. We're talking about all express volume together. And a lot of times what we're seeing is that the high priority stuff, the FOs and the POs, is about 40% of the total express volume. So you're already seeing express volume in a lot of your markets. So you're used to seeing that amongst your packages already. So in the total number, you're going to get even more of those regular 2 days and low priority stuff. And then of the total volume, about 40% of the total express volume you get should roughly be, unless you're in like a really busy downtown district or something with a lot of doctors' offices, lawyers' offices, something like that, I would expect about 40% of that total express volume to be those high priority delivery stops. Now, pickup stops, we're not really sure of yet. We don't have good data on that yet. We just don't know the total impact of the pickups yet, but do be aware that you might have to have those pickups back to the terminal earlier than your cut time for your ground trailers to go out. I know I mentioned that earlier. I just want to reemphasize, you may have to have your express pickup volume back to the terminal before you would typically maybe want to end a driver's workday. So just be aware of that. Maybe someone gets done early and they can make a sweep of all the different trucks that have express pickups on them and go by and grab those and then go back to the terminal. There's a lot of things that you could potentially do to get this volume back, but be aware that is something you're going to have to account for. 2 more things real quick, Josh. First is the service standards. And so we see a 98.5% delivery service standard for your FOs and your POs and your E2 AMs. And so in other words, those very time definite, we call it time definite deliveries or time critical deliveries. Those are going to be held at a 98.5% service standard. And also it seems like they're applying that to the rest of the express volume as well. So this is totally separate from your ILS score. They're expecting all those time definite delivery stops to have a 98.5% success score with the same service exceptions that you've seen for your ground volume. So delivering to businesses during business hours. So your code 4s, your code twos for incorrect addresses. The same delivery exceptions that would count against your ILS will also count against your time definite service score. So be aware of those. Make sure you're prioritizing those. Again, instead of just getting to a business by whenever it closes, now you got to be at that business before the window closes and hope the business is open, right? So you got a little bit more of a sensitive situation there that you're going to have to account for. And then the final thing is, and a lot of people, especially me, one of the first things I thought of was, man, if I have express volume and ground volume on the same truck, am I going to have to go back and run my route twice to make sure I get all the boxes to where they need to go by the delivery windows? And the reality is, yes, that may very well be a factor. And in fact, UPS does some version of that on theirs. And as we integrate the priorities along with the standard ground stuff, I would expect that to factor in some fashion. Now, again, just like with everything we say, your success as a P&D operator completely comes down to your ability to optimize and add efficiencies as best you can, as best you understand your territory. The more you can do that, it's going to be even more critical with this express volume as it starts to get as a bigger and bigger percentage of your total volume. So Josh, those are some of the things that we've kind of noticed so far. Covered some of the revenue. I wish I had more to say there, but I think that's kind of the big picture that people need to be aware of.
Perfect. Yeah. And I'll add just a little bit of color on the revenue side, just so you kind of know what we're seeing, even though it's not clear. What we're seeing is it appears there's some kind of additional incentive beyond the base rates for your express packages, assuming you are within certain service standards. The reason we're a little bit uncertain is we aren't seeing those paid as consistently as we would expect them to be based on the way we're seeing it. So we're going to continue to monitor it. But the way it does appear to be functioning right now is that there is additional incentive tied to successfully delivering your express packages that can offset some of those questions we have around, am I going to have to field, the same route twice, or am I going to have to do an AVP route or a pickup route? And if that is the case, there are routes like an AVP route that are cheaper to run that could make it where, it makes a lot of sense to use that for some of your pickup type or your express type deliveries that you need to do. So again, what we're seeing is this is an opportunity for us, no matter what, it's additional volume. And it looks like there's additional incentive tied to that volume. And so what we're seeing here is our major challenge and what we're continuing to work through, what we will be providing updates on, working through with you and individual questions as you have them, as Express starts to roll out, is how can we continue to bring this into our network and operate efficiently? And that is something that it's going to depend on the volume you've got coming into your network, the way your routes look now, and it's going to involve some DRO skills that, if you haven't started to work on those skills, if you don't have someone internally who knows how to handle different ways of planning your routes and using the different tools, it's something you should work on now, because it's not going to get easier once Express is in, but there is money to be made. There is volume to add on to what we're seeing. So that's the good news. It is a way for us to grow our bottom line. We just have to keep coming together and working on this to make sure we can all be successful as it comes. So like Jesse said, like I've said, we're going to keep bringing more information. This isn't going to be here's the information on Express. You're never going to hear from us again. As we have these, we will keep bringing you more and more updates to make sure everybody's on the same page. So Jesse, we are about to open it up to pure Q&A. Before we get there, you and I have to answer the question of the day, which, as a reminder for everyone, the question of the day is, what do you consider to be the greatest TV show of all time? And so we'll need you to answer that question, then we'll answer your question in the Q&A. So Jesse, you go first.
Man, you put me in a hard spot on this one, Josh. I went back and forth on this for a while between Breaking Bad and The Office.
Yeah.
If I have to choose between one of those two, man, I'm gonna have to go with The Office. And just overall, just what it brings, the drama, the humor, it's to me, it's the greatest show of all time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they do two different things. I think Breaking Bad's a story that's timeless. It's something that you experience it. It was great. Office, you can, the first time you experience is just as good as the seventh time. So I think there's a lot of value in a show like that. And 30 minutes is a lot easier. You can sit down and just enjoy it. For me, I think I lean more into the Office category in terms of show. Office is up there for me. I really liked a show called The Good Place, which if you've never seen it, it's only 4 seasons. Really funny. They're like 30 minutes each, but told an amazing story in 4 seasons and like 40 episodes that are 30 minutes. And for me, I think I've just decided that I really enjoy when the story is short, contained, and finished. I think about it like Lost and a lot of those shows that used to be kind of the water cooler TV that had 20 seasons and they were each an hour long episodes with 20 episodes in it. And it's just imagining going back and watching that and enjoying it sounds painful, even though I know I did. So for me, I think the self-contained stories kind of do it for me. But Breaking Bad and Office are both up there.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into the Q&A. So some of these questions kind of came in as we were talking. So a lot of them we've answered, or some of them we've answered a lot of it. This one's a relatively simple one. So first, he said the greatest TV show of all time is The Office. Close second is Game of Thrones. I would agree with you if we stop after, if we just don't include the last season or two of Game of Thrones. So just as a potential seller, how hard is it to sell routes? Just wondering, can I be successful? What do I go through? What I would say is what the process looks like, what we're trying to do when you come to us is we'll do the valuation for free so that you can know what we would value your business at. And oftentimes that's the goal of that is for you to understand, how much money could I make? Is it worth my time, my energy? Do I want to stay in or do I want to even look at the selling? It's often it's just you want the data to know how to make that decision. From there, I mean, we have a large pool of buyers. We're still doing over 60% of the volume in the FedEx space of all transactions. So there are still plenty of buyers looking to get into this space. And it's all just going to be a factor of, how competitive is your business? How competitive is the pricing? A lot of factors will go into with you. So I think the easiest first step there is if you reach out, we'll do the valuation for free and you can decide if you even care or want to proceed with that process. So this one's from Jonathan. So greatest TV show of all time is The Office. We're getting a lot of votes for The Office, Jesse. So it looks like you might be right.
Yes.
But can you talk about the impact of Network 2.0 on line haul contractors? So the question here is, does all the Express change? Is there a change coming to line haul? So there's not an exact Express corollary on the line haul side. Express does come through a network. There's FedEx Freight. There's also different ways that travels. What I would say is Express volume will be coming into the line haul network. It will, there will be more volume coming through the line haul network. How that actually affects the run totals is a little bit up in the air to see how that's going to affect the overall network. Because right now it's not enough of an impact with the few terminals that are doing it to see how that'll actually affect the line haul ground network. So that's something we're watching really closely. It should have a positive effect. There should be growth, additional runs, but I can't really speak to the timeline there. Other than that, the goal is for the full integration to happen by June of next year. So while we don't know exact dates between now and then when certain steps will happen, that's not a lot of time. We're looking at about a year now. So hopefully it's not that all the changes happen in October of this year, right before peak season. Hopefully it's something, that either happens soon over the summer or at the beginning of next year as volumes, slow at the beginning of the year, but we'll see. And as we find out, we'll tell you. Another one on The Office, man. So Zach is asking a question that we've kind of already addressed of, if we run multiple waves of dispatch, AVP or pickup, or we're going to be sending more than one van per neighborhood. And ideally, you're not sending multiple to the same neighborhood. That is something we want to avoid. And, that is something that some people are running into where to keep up with the new Express, all they did was add more trucks delivering to the new stops and basically still have two of their trucks. That's what we're talking about when we say there is money, there is profit to be made when Express hits the network. The challenge will be if all you do when Express comes is say, I guess I'll just add trucks to deliver the extra Express volume into the same areas, then you're not saving any money. That's just I'll just add on and put a Band-Aid to this volume, and that doesn't help you. What you're trying to do is structure your routes or find creative ways like AVP so that you don't have to just add 4 routes. If you're adding a route, it's a shorter one or one that's really efficient, fuel efficient. You got a truck that only handles like 10 packages. Maybe a manager can do it. So there's different ways to look at it. And that's really where we're going to be spending our time. And that's where you're going to need to kind of roll up your sleeves as an owner and start to invest time, or have your BC start planning on how you can structure those routes.
Yeah, now let me just add kind of a little pro tip that it's kind of a you heard it here first type of deal that we've actually pioneered in the field. Just a quick thing of education real quick. When you guys see wave dispatches, the way you can really let's say you're forced to do a wave dispatch, like your terminal just comes to you and says, we're going to roll out wave dispatch. We can get you we can get you these boxes for Express later. So what we're going to do is have one dispatch where you can actually get your trucks out of here earlier if you want, but then you're going to have one that's later where we're not going to let you leave until X time, and up to an hour after your cut time. What you can do is, if you want to keep all those boxes, if you want to hold a truck a little bit longer and get everything on that same truck, what you can do is ask your terminal to create another work area for you to add to your DRO, which almost exactly matches the work area that exists for a certain parking spot. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're running on belt 3 and you have work areas 320, 324, 328, right? And you want to run, you have multiple waves that are coming. So you can only use work areas 320, 324, and 328. You can only use those on one wave. You can't assign those to multiple waves in DRO, but you want to get wave 2 volume onto that work area. Well, how do you do that? Well, if you create something where the first number of that work area is a 3 and it ends with the same numbers, those boxes will still get sorted to that same belt, and the package handler can be taught very simply to put it on that same truck. So all you would do is just say, for my routes 320, 324, and 328, Mr. PD manager, can you add me a 3320, a 3324, and a 3328 work area into the master table and add them into my DRO? And when those package handlers see those come down the line, that's a very quick conversation. Hey, if you see these, yeah, there's an extra 3 on there. Just go ahead and put these on the truck. Now you're going to have potentially duplicate SID numbers, right? Where there's going to be a 320/1001 and a 3320/1001. That could happen, but that's a lot better than having 2 trucks in the same neighborhood, right? So just teach your drivers and the package handlers. Again, it's not the most optimal, but it is a potential solution. It's sort of an insider hack. That's how we've run wave dispatches at Patent Logistics before. This is what you can do. Just kind of add something to get all the volume from both waves onto the same truck. That's one thing you can do.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, because those are the kinds of things that we're gonna all discover together. That, if I had to guess, there's not going to be a lot of tips and tricks taught by FedEx on how to manage this and be more successful. So those are the types of things we just need to bring to each other and keep using it to be successful in this change. A quick question here. Somebody asked, is this going to be recorded and sent out? All of our weekly webinars are recorded. It will be on our YouTube page as soon as we get that posted. So it'll be there for anyone to go watch. Just the Route Consultant YouTube page. Question here. I don't know if you have an opinion on it, from Brooke. First off, she says The Office. Everyone says The Office, Jesse. So
I'm gonna go ahead and take the win on this one, Josh.
Yeah. So will some areas become express only? Like, do you think any extreme rural areas would become express only?
No, it's all getting rolled into ground. So if anything, it would be ground only, where they wouldn't offer your standard overnight or priority overnight deliveries. I think out into these extreme rural areas, I think you're much more likely to see that, because again, your express branded trucks are going away. And in fact, I believe your ground branded trucks are going away. It's just going to be some form of FedEx, either Federal Express or FedEx or something, to where it's showing that every single truck that goes out, no matter what, the little dog logos have already gone away. So I would expect that all the colors will be the same and all the exact branding will be the same, and it will all be under the ground network as one FedEx or FedEx 2.0, however you want to say it. I wouldn't look at it as FedEx Express only or FedEx Ground only. It's going to be FedEx only to whatever areas that they service.
Yeah. Next one here is, for AVP routes, where can I sign up for my business here in Vermont? I want to start and manage and use it. I need it. It's needed badly here. So we can talk you through it offline, but this is something that you can set up. You basically just let the terminal know there's a few things you have to fill out. And one of the things you also need is whoever's driving has to get an additional commercial insurance on their insurance. But this isn't, you don't need decals. It's not that type of thing. It's going to be a personal vehicle, and you can get started. We can share with you the steps to do that after this. So if you reach out to our team, just info@routeconsultant.com, we can help you out there. Now, next one from Brian. His favorite show is Lost. So I at least mentioned Lost, so I'll count that.
Definitely an honorable mention for sure.
Yeah. So is FedEx going to be eliminating some contractors? So the goal of this integration is not to eliminate FedEx contractors. It's more so to eliminate the employees on the FedEx Express side. And we don't know, there will probably be some of those employees that are kept in some capacity. I got a great question recently, which is, what is FedEx going to do with all of those vehicles, and will those be for sale? I don't know that answer, but that's something that, FedEx doesn't have any reason, once they aren't running those routes, to use those vehicles. So I'd expect there's some kind of solution they're planning for there. But hopefully that's an opportunity for some of us to get some vehicles.
Well, expect to see a lot of P700s, because that's what's going to be available.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And then another question here, how is scale factoring into sale activity? So I think there's two sides of that. So something to know, basically two sides of this. Well, one, you never heard scale. Basically, FedEx has rules where in the past, there was a cap on how large in the terminal you could be. And it was around, 10% in a lot of terminals. And that varied terminal to terminal. Basically, the idea is they don't want any one contractor to be too large in a terminal. Some of those scale guidelines have been relaxing recently. So we are seeing much larger size businesses be approved for you to grow into. So if you're a contractor, we've seen a lot of people acquiring more zip codes recently in terminals and growing significantly larger than we would have expected to be approved. And we've also seen sales at a much higher scale be approved recently. So it is much less of a worry about, not being able to sell your business if it's too large. So that's the good news. On the flip side, FedEx is also increasing the minimum. So they're pushing for contractors to be a little bit larger. It used to be 500 stops, and now they're pushing that up a little bit, where they want you to be, as a minimum size, a little bit larger. So right now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're saying if you're too small, you have to get out. What it does mean is if you're too small, it's really hard to sell right now. And what they're saying is if you're at like that 500, 600 stop range, a lot of what we're hearing from terminal managers is if you're selling, it's going to have to go to somebody at the terminal who's contiguous to you, that we add it to their territory. So scale on the one end, much bigger territories we're seeing. That's great. That makes sales easier if you've grown larger. Sale on the small end is getting, that's a little bit more dicey right now. So just know that if you're on that small end, you might either have to grow a little bit before you can sell, or you might have to sell to another contractor at the same terminal. All right.
So many to choose from, man.
I know. Yeah. So Steve said his greatest TV show of all time is MASH. And that is, if you're actually talking like greatest TV shows of all time, that's up there. I have such a recency bias. I have a problem. I don't rewatch anything. So it's what have you done for me lately type thing when it comes to TV shows. So, but yeah, so his question is, do we have any initial thoughts on some of the ISP changes that were rolled out 2 weeks ago? So just a brief response here. So when it comes to the actual ISP contract, FedEx always has and always will hold all the cards for that actual contract, as opposed to the actual negotiations we do around rates. There is no negotiation of the contractual terms of the ISP agreement. And so what I saw is not surprising. It's what they always done, and I've always done and always will do, where they're just firming up the language that protect them and their business as they see fit. But at the end of the day, they do have to preserve the value of the equity and profitability of contractors, or they won't have a ground network. And that is, a huge chunk of their volume right now. And as Express rolls in, it's an even larger chunk. So they have to preserve that. But as entrepreneurs, it makes sense. We should always be aware of changes as they come and plan for any potentials. But at the end of the day, it's always going to come back to being successful around safety and around service, and then having a contingency plan when everything breaks, and putting that in place so that, and all the inevitable changes that come and that FedEx brings, that we're ready and staying on top of it. Across the country, we want to continue to create a space where contractors can come together, learn from each other, look at the challenges, and help push each other to be more successful each day. So contract changes to the ISP agreement, that's part of the world we live in. It's not anything surprising. It's just kind of keeping up with the times, and we just have to continue to be successful in whatever sandbox is created for us. Let me see. Transition of, so this one is an interesting question. I think DJ's favorite TV show above, was I Love Lucy. So another classic. So his question is, do you see a transition of express drivers moving into the ground network? Do you think they're going to apply for those jobs? Is there a big difference between wages currently between how express drivers are paid and how ground drivers are paid? Do you know, Jesse, anything about how express is paid versus ground?
Yeah, the benefits are pretty different right now, especially. I don't have current figures on wages, but the benefits that kick in are, I mean, you don't see a lot of express drivers retiring early. I'll just put it that way. So yeah, there is a difference. Early data we're getting from the markets that have already transitioned that are in this pilot. We have not gotten any reports that any express drivers have gone over to ground. Now, whether they were offered jobs, I would assume some of them probably were, but we didn't see a big transition there. And I'll let you guys kind of piece together the rest there.
Yeah, so we'll see as it rolls out, if there are more express drivers gone, like this is a bigger change, we might see more of it, but yeah, that's the way it is right now. Yeah. Quick question from Ken. Again, greatest TV show MASH. So that's got 2 votes now. So any updates on EV charging stations at terminals? That's really going to be localized. It's the most I've seen is in California, which makes sense. California has some of the best state incentives to have EV. It's one of those things where I think everyone sees that the potential value of electric vehicles, they don't have as much repair and maintenance. You don't have to deal with fuel. Electricity is cheaper than fuel most times. But the challenge right now is even if you want to have a mobile charging station, which a lot of companies are willing to bring, that only works for so many trucks. And so when you're thinking about, can I move to a full electric fleet? It's usually a factor where, I got to see if the terminal has the capability of charging all of those vehicles. And just right now, the grid can't handle that in most areas. And so it's kind of just an infrastructure issue right now that FedEx is, working on. They're trying to solve behind the scenes. But I would, while that's going to continue to be something that we're working towards, I wouldn't expect that to be some sudden change in the next 12 months where suddenly electric vehicles are everywhere, because infrastructure is expensive and takes time to fix as opposed to just policy changes.
Yeah, and remember too that when FedEx puts this infrastructure in, I mean, there's no going back. I mean, once they put it in, it's there. And so they're going to want probably more than just a bare majority of the fleet that runs out of their facility to be EV before they will consider it. So, I mean, if that's something you're really wanting in your building, I would seriously get with your other contractors and say, we're going to make a major push, because think about it from their perspective. If a lot of people transition to EV, then decide they don't like it and go back to gas burners. Well, FedEx has already spent the millions to put it in, and it will take millions for each, probably potentially for each facility, depending on how, if they got to have their own substation. I mean, some of them, that's how much power we're talking. So it's a big move for FedEx for sure.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't know if you can give any clarity here this is a question from Terry. His best TV show is A-Team. Oh, great TV show. Yes. They redid the movie too. So when you say the volume is a 1/6 to a 1/7 of the volume, what is that tied to? Is that incremental to existing volume? Like, can you just give a little more?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that clarification, Terry. Yeah, so what I mean by that is of the total weekly stops between Express and Ground, the total volume run by the contractors out of these pilot terminals, of the total weekly stops, about a 1/6 to a 1/7 of that total volume is made up of express volume, total express volume, not just the the priorities and the standard overnights, but all of the express volume is roughly 1/6 to 1/7 of the total ground and express combined volume for the week.
Yep, perfect. And if you have further questions on that, you want to talk through, if we don't get to it in the chat, if you reach out to us, we can schedule time to talk through that. Question from an anonymous attendee. They're from Canada, and if you don't know, there is FedEx in Canada. There is a contractor model, but they're a little bit different. He's just asking, how is the ISP model paid in the US? So you have contracted rates. It's a combination of fixed constant charges like the service charge that is paid weekly, and then there are variable charges like an amount you are paid per package and per stop. There's a couple other charges, but that is the majority of how you're paid: service charge, package charge, stop charges. Just a question: what's the best resource on your website for someone who knows nothing? We do have a route consultant or a FedEx 101. It's just a series of videos where we're trying to say, here are all of the questions we have that we see people ask early on, completely free. That's where I'd point you to if you're just looking for, let me start at ground zero, grow from there. Webinars are a great place as well. Like I said, they're all on YouTube. So if you want to go back and look at all of the previous questions we've asked, you've got as many hours of webinar content as you could possibly want. And then typically from that point, we have 2-day investor summits that are designed as kind of crash courses, whether virtually or in person. We do both of them. That are designed for you as a new investor to come on site. We'll teach you everything we possibly can. We'll bring vendors, we'll bring different people for you to learn from. And the goal of that session is we want you coming out of that summit to say, yes, this is the space for me. I'm ready to invest my time and energy into it. Or no, this is not the space for me. I do not want to invest my time. I don't want to buy $1 million business and find out it was the wrong decision. We want to help you make that decision earlier than later. All right. Let me see. A lot of these I think we have answered, Jesse. So let me just scan real quick. I think I've left some in here that were okay. I'll just answer this. It's kind of a broader question. First, show Game of Thrones, so my opinion on that has not changed. But just a general one from Julian. Do we feel like the merger will make our businesses more valuable? The volume's going to go up, so will costs. So do we think we'll make more money with this merger? I think that the idea and the way we're seeing it right now, the answer is yes. The volume's there, and there are certainly ways for you to run this profitably. So as long as you can maintain your profitability, so if you're at a 15% margin, revenue increases and you can maintain that margin, you're making more money. Now, what I would say is, and that's why we're trying to emphasize it, with more volume, it's express. There's going to be complexities. It looks like there's the right incentives baked in to offset those complexities, but it will require you to be invested, to spend time and make sure you're routing in a way that you may not have had to do before. You may have been able to get by with, being pretty efficient, but not doing a lot in maybe you don't do a lot of pickups right now. So maybe you're not used to anything time sensitive. And so that hasn't really been, one of the muscles you have to flex as a part of your day-to-day and your DRO. So there may be some learning and some tools and some things that we need to pick up to be profitable, but they're there, and there are contractors who are doing it. We can help you with everything we've ever learned and help you craft that model. So when it comes to it, if you find that that's not something you're comfortable with, reach out to us. We're happy to help, but I do see the potential with increased volume. It's just going to require us to use a few different tools that we may not always use to make sure we're achieving that revenue. All right. Okay, I'll leave it up. I got a quick thing I'll say. So if you have any last questions and you're typing them in furiously, I'll make sure to come back to it and check before I sign off. But if you missed the beginning, I just wanted to do a quick reminder again. If there's any event you're thinking about this year attending, whether you're new or a contractor, it's the event in Vegas in July 28th and through the 30th. It is the biggest event of the year, and it is the one that you're going to meet the most people from across the country. So you're going to get a lot of different perspectives. You're going to get to talk with people that the FedEx space isn't always easy to meet other contractors and talk and learn from them. So we want to have this space, this event where we can all come together. And it's also right up against the potential UPS strike. So if that's still up in the air, the Expo is July 28th through 30th. And the strike is potentially set for the 31st. So it should be exciting times. And so hopefully you'll all be there and we can talk through things that have happened between now and then. But, it's a chance where a lot of times I don't get to see, I'm talking to Jesse and I'm talking to a blank screen. I want to make sure that we actually get the chance to meet all of you, time to interact and make sure that, we're able to learn from each other. So that link is in the chat. If you're looking for how to register, it's completely free. But again, the hotel block does sell out. So if there's anything you hear from me from the Expo, it's that the hotel block sells out. If you want a chance to stay close and not have to walk in the Vegas heat, go ahead and do that sooner rather than later. Quick question from DJ. Are there routing softwares that are stronger with DRO? Yes, there are. So we can answer it offline, kind of talk through the pros and cons, but what I would say is I would encourage you to have something beyond DRO. So there's different services like Ground Cloud, Beans Route, Package Route, but I would not tell you, if I had any advice, it's that, this is going to be one of the most critical parts of your organization as Express rolls out. So, you can try to do it with DRO, but we have, Jesse's an expert. He did it all the time across the whole country. We still use services. We still use routing software in addition to DRO. So those are tools that are valuable that you will see, the cost benefit is an easy choice. So I will strongly recommend having some kind of routing software in addition to DRO to make sure you're achieving as high profitability as you can as this rolls out.
Yeah, and Josh, and for those who may not know, DRO, you don't have a choice whether to use DRO or not. I mean, this is your proprietary software. This is how you tell FedEx what box goes on what van. Okay, so you have to use DRO. It's not precisely, it is routing software, but it's not navigation software. That's where a third-party vendor like a Ground Cloud or a Beans will be able to come in and help you and give you specific additional tools that once the boxes get on your truck, DRO's part is done, right? So then you got to rely on something else for that last mile part to get the boxes to the door.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, that is all the time we have today. So appreciate everyone coming out. Again, we will continue to bring these updates to you as we have them. This is not the last update we'll have on this. So stay tuned. We'll keep you updated and we'll keep on having this conversation as we go throughout the year. So Jesse, thanks again for joining and we will see you all next week.
Thanks, Josh. Bye, everyone.